Hey guys, Flying from off to Lancy, and today we're going to do another cinematography breakdown. I've had a lot of questions about our latest video, which is a surf documentary. So if you haven't watched it, maybe go and watch it now and then come back to this later. And what I want to do in this video is talk about how I shot this project, what were the challenges in shooting something like this, the gear I used, how I framed certain shots, and pretty much everything that was involved in creating this video. So before I start, don't forget to subscribe to see more videos like this one, and let's jump into it. So this was actually my first time shooting a surf documentary, and I really liked it. I shot this over 2 days on a weekend, 2 half days, so 1 morning session, 1 afternoon session. I used the BMPCC 6K with a small HD 7-inch monitor. I also used a matte box, a mini matte box from Tilta, the mini follow focus as well from Tilta, and the Nisi Cinema Filters IR&D because it was very bright. For lenses, I used mainly the Sigma 18-35 1.8 and the Canon 70-200 f4 IS. I also used the 16-35 f4, but not as much as I thought I would, but still just for a few shots. So for this project, I knew before that I wanted something organic, something grainy that had not a dark look, but something authentic, and that's what I did. So I shot everything handheld. And it's the first time that I actually didn't use any post-stabilization or noise reduction. It's just straight from the camera. And it didn't really bother me because it was dark and that's how it was. And I shot everything handheld to have that kind of like I said, like true, authentic look to it. So now what I'm going to do, we're going to jump into DaVinci Resolve. I'm going to play the video and stop at a few scenes and just explain and take you through the process of getting that specific shot. Okay, so we are in DaVinci now, and I'm going to start playing the footage, and I'll stop at a few frames. Okay, so this is the first scene of the video and one of the first that we actually shot on the second day. As you can see, it's extremely bright. The sun was actually sitting just about here out of frame, shining this way. So what I had to do is kind of keep the sun out of the frame because otherwise everything would be completely blown out. I still had some details on the shadows here and a bit of haze here that was nice. For this, because I was shooting between two part of the ocean, so there was kind of like a big rock in the middle, and that's what I was standing because that would give me a vantage point to shoot down and get as much coverage as I could. So I was shooting all this sequence on 70-200 f4 IS, pretty much at around ISO 1250 to 800 depending on how bright it was. Having a zoom also allowed me to do some cutaway shots like this, because when you're shooting surf, well, I mean, like from that point of view, there's only so much you can get. The waves are going one direction, Sam is going into one direction as well. So all I had to do is kind of like stay in one spot, but try to find ideas to get varied shot. And this was done through composition. So going tight on shots like this, for example, and trying to find one of the subject of the video is surfing by yourself. So that's why I was trying to isolate Sam here and putting left of frame and leaving all this part kind of like empty. And I've done this a few times repeatedly throughout the video. The tricky part with this though is because obviously everything was so bright, I had to actually expose for the wave, for the top of the waves, for where the light was hitting the ocean, like I did here. For example, I was exposing for this was quite dark, but I really like that kind of contrast. And normally I don't shoot like that, I don't shoot as contrasty, but I didn't mind because this is kind of like an epic sort of like activity, you know. It's like surfing in the ocean. It's not just like a person in a shed or something like that. It's something that you can have that kind of enhanced like reality, if you will. So that didn't really bother me. It did look like that, but as you can see here, this is kind of like not usual. This is something that we got lucky that morning with that light, but it's not like your everyday landscape. So again, Sam here in the middle. I think I shot everything at f4 to 5.6 because I was so far, but that meant that it was very hard for me to keep focus on him and to track him as well, because at 200 mil, when you're like 200 meters away, it becomes very difficult to track someone, especially he's going really fast. So I was shooting at 25 FPS and 50 FPS here, and that helped a lot. So in this one, like you can see, this is one of my favorite shots. It is completely dark, but I kind of like the silhouette look. I was really going for this, exposing for this, because otherwise this would be just like a patch of just white light, and it would look really nice. So again, I'm probably a bit underexposed here, but I really like this, and it kind of fit the whole, like I was saying, the whole idea that I wanted this to be organic, that I wanted this to be a bit grainy and dark. That is what I've done for this. So my main focus was composition. So now I'm going to jump to another frame. There's nothing fancy about this, just practical light from the top, like going down. Nothing too crazy. So now the car shot. This is probably where I've got the most questions about. So it's quite dark, as you can see. I'll play the first part of the sequence so you can see. For this, I was actually exposing for the lights. So every time there was a light outside, that's when I was rolling, because otherwise it would be pitch black. So I was exposing for this, and that's why all of that is quite dark. I was on a Sigma, again, shooting wide open 1.8 to f2, and I was shooting pretty much at, I think about 18 to 22 mil, I think, and just to get everything in a car. But I really loved how, because it was so dark, you would get this being an old car, little clock here, little red button like just here. And I don't know, I thought like it looked kind of interesting, and you've got those lines as well. So I was really happy with this shot. It's one of my favorite shots, I think, in the whole video. A lot of people ask me if I use noise reduction. To be honest, I didn't. Like I was saying, I just kind of crushed the black in post and make sure that I was always focusing and exposing for the light. So my focus here is always on the windscreen as well, because I wanted everything to fall into darkness, and this wasn't the focus of the video, this was the frame. So there's always the frame within the frame in this shot. So even here you can see a bit of the car. I always wanted to have that feeling that we are in the car and not just like have this external like point of view. Same for here, keep this here, exposed for the sky again, always looking to the same direction. And I did this up until we got to the beach. So even these parts, for example, follow the same principle, exposing for the headlights and the sky, and leaving everything else here fall into darkness pretty much. So like I was saying, I didn't mind that it was dark. That fit the project, and I was happy with it. On the monitor it looked a lot brighter than it was though, but still it didn't really bother me. You can see here there's just enough light. When we arrive here, the sun is starting to be a bit warmer, a bit higher, and then again keeping the frames here, shooting everything wide, which was nice. And then we get to this part. So this is actually just 2 minutes after, but it's already so much brighter. But now I'm exposing for the sky, for the actual, just for this part here. So you still get a bit of light on the car here at the front because the sun is rising. This was shot, everything was shot handheld, so I could move around the car a lot, shooting an 18 mil, 20 mil, like always again. And I followed the same kind of principle for this whole sequence. So as you can see here, this is really grainy. I've added grain in post as well, but this was very, very grainy. And again, I didn't mind. What I was trying to do is not to have the sky here that was getting really, really hot very quickly. I didn't want this to be completely overexposed. So then we get to this shot as well. What I liked about this is because Sam was going this way, what I was trying to do is kind of like have this line going to where he was going, which is here. I was also trying to line up the car with the ocean, just to, like I said, really try to focus on composition for this short documentary, because documentaries you don't really get the time to think too much sometimes, but this one I really try hard to get some interesting frames, and especially because we were filming in one go. I didn't ask him to redo anything like that. Only once I asked him to slow down because I couldn't keep up, but that's about it. So yeah, again, reflection here, line there. So yeah, trying to find interesting line and really quickly, so kind of work on instinct more than anything else. I'll come back to the interview frame later. So this after, we had to be careful this going to the beach because there was a lot of water here. So I was working with a camera. It's not a super heavy rig, but still I could get quite unbalanced and it was very slippery. So when I was filming this, I knew that it was roughly in the middle, and I actually didn't look what I was filming. I was kind of following him with the camera in my hand and just hope for the best. similar sequence. And now, as you can see, this is just 5 minutes after, and this is so hot. But I had to actually change the aperture and the exposure in camera as I was shooting. So if I play this clip like the actual raw clip, you could see that I'm actually just changing exposure as I'm walking, which is fine. It's my own like documentary. I know that I could edit this out. But anyway, I tried in terms of composition here to stay always a bit below him, just to have this feeling that you arriving at this beach with him and you like discovering this place, not through his eyes but with him, if that makes sense. And I also, like on this one, put him on the left, and some other shots put him on the right, but mainly in the middle to have that kind of like sensation of like that feeling of following someone somewhere. This is not an adventure, but it's not just a regular activity either, especially in this kind of scenery. So yeah, here again, have line right in the middle, Sam in the middle here, trying to make sure that this is not too blown out. And yeah, I kind of repeated that process. Like this was just shot in like 6 or 7 minutes, this whole like kind of sequence. We didn't stop, and I just let him do his things and trying to capture as much as I could. So now I'm going to jump to another scene that's just after what we've just seen. So now the sun is much brighter. It's just after, pretty much after this sequence here. So on this one here, as I'm going through, the sun here was so bright, but I didn't really have time. Like I love the way this looked, and I was actually surprised that the Blackmagic managed to hold that much details in the shadows, because this is as hot as it's ever going to be. But yeah, it did really well. I was on a 70-200 at I think 5.6 ISO 400. I still had the filters on, and you can see they kind of helped me keep this black, and I didn't have any like funky colors going through this. Handheld again. And I just love that sequence. I just love the way like he came down, and as he went down, you could see it's gradually becoming darker, and this was like correctly exposed. I just love this. Sometimes you get lucky with light and you get this like, I don't know, it's bouncing here and here, you get a bit of highlight on him, and I like the idea that he was crossing this field. I actually didn't stop recording. I think the file was probably like 2 minutes long from the left part to the top of the rock. And you can see in the back here, this is where I was shooting before that opening sequence, that kind of like golden light. I was up here, which is probably here. And that gave me that point of view shooting this way. So the light now was coming from the left. So, because I knew that, like I was saying, that shooting surf, you're always pointing in the same direction. Your ocean is always somewhere, you can't move it. So unless you're in the water, then there's not much you can do. So I was like, okay, I've got enough shots there. Maybe let's go to the other side when it's a bit darker. And then we got to that top here, and this is one of my favorite shots. I actually, when I was shooting this, I actually thought this would be a good thumbnail. I was like, I could put a title here, but I didn't end up using this one. But still, this is a nice shot. And again, composition, that was my main thing. Put him in the middle, isolated, have a kind of like a different ratio, like 2-to-1 ratio, but the opposite, just to have that kind of like minimalistic like approach to this. And then we go into the other side, and it's kind of much darker, but you get nice blues. And I was just again trying to find some good angles and to have something different. I knew that I had like gold on the previous side, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna get some blue to get a bit of color contrast throughout the video, so it looks like I'm shooting a lot. Okay, so now what I want to do is go to the interview frame, which is, so the interview, there's a few interview frames throughout the video, but it's essentially this. So on this one here, there's a big window like right here. You can actually see it on, I'll just go a bit forward. So that window here that you can see, yeah, so that's the one that we were using, this one. And on this one here, that was overcast that day, so there was enough light. This was on the second day. Normally I would do an interview on the first day if I could, just so I can have like some kind of like of ideas of what the subject is talking about, and maybe find something after shooting something for that specific sentence or the specific ideas, or yeah. But this time we didn't, because surfing was the main interest, and we had to go when the waves were good, when the weather was good. So we did an interview last, which I was kind of like a bit stressed about, but anyway, we didn't use anything crazy, just natural light. Jess added a rug here, which I thought was very helpful. He added a bit of colors, added something interesting in the frame. And as I was saying in my previous breakdown, when I was shooting that letterpress documentary, the interview frame wasn't really pleasing. I know I could have done better, but we didn't have time, and that's what I meant when having a background that has something interesting. This, for example, have the surfboard, and it's definitely directly related to the actual subject of the video, so to me it helps a lot. Add some colors, add something interesting in the background, and it adds to the story. Like, even with just this frame, you know that it could be about surfing. Obviously Sam has the look, the long hair, the beard, but it looks like this is part of the story. I shot the interview on the Sigma, mostly at f2.8 ISO 400, and no bounce, nothing, just natural light coming this way. You can see it's quite soft here on Jess's face, and on Sam there's a bit of a contrast ratio, but not too much. It's quite pleasing. I wasn't going for any kind of look, I just pointed the camera and did a few adjustments and realized that it was just great the way it was. Sometimes just less is more, and this is a perfect example for it. Yeah, it's not like perfect, maybe I would have liked to cover this later, but it looks good to me, the colors look great, and I was happy with it. And we had just about here the boom with the Sennheiser on it pointing this way, and it's the one that I'm using right now, and it worked pretty well. Like, there was no other thing that we did to make this any different than it was, and it was just a simple interview frame on tripod, and that's the only time I use a tripod in this video actually. We had the in about here, I think, the EOS R pointing at Sam's face to get some variety in shots, but also as backup, you know, like you're doing an interview, you plug into the camera with sound, it's good to have a backup just in case you need the audio or something happens in one file or anything like that. So that's what we did. I didn't end up using any of the files from the EOS R, but just in case they were there. Okay, so now what I want to do is go to the daytime shot. So obviously this is surfing doco, so I had to shoot as much surfing as I could. So this was shot in the middle of the day, kind of going towards sunset. It was quite bright, this was extremely bright, so again I had the filters, the Nisi filters, and for this I used the Canon 70-200 f4 IS. Again, IS was very, very helpful. I shot a mix of 25 frames per second, 50, and also 120. 120 because you don't really, I know some people like to use 120 for b-roll or anything like that, but it's not something that feels natural to me unless it's warranted. Surfing is this kind of like activity where you can actually use it and it makes sense to me. So I was like, okay, I'm going to shoot as much as I can in 120. The problem is that I was shooting in UHD, so in 4K, and 120 is only 2.8, so I had to upscale the footage in post, and it was fine. Like, it held up pretty well, and I think because all the shots are together you don't notice as much, but they are definitely a bit softer, but they didn't really bother me. The tricky part was to keep Sam in the frame, because there were quite a few people surfing in the water with him as well. Like, at this point here, there's actually like a few people here and here in the water, so I had to kind of isolate him because I didn't want anyone else to be in the frame. And sometimes it's nice to have people in the frame, like here for example. I kept this shot because I like it, but I always wanted Sam to be the focus, and sometimes it was really hard to actually know who was who. Actually, this guy, for example, had blonde hair as well. Twice I got him in the shot thinking it was Sam, and I followed him for maybe 20 seconds, and I was like, it's not Sam, so can't use the shot. It was a cool shot anyway, but that's just the way it is. It's just a minor challenge. But yeah, this was just shot all in one day. And again, composition, that's when I was trying to get some compression, like in this shot, for example, get a line of the horizon just enough to know that that's where you are. Same thing for here as well. So when you actually look at this, there's a lot of shots that are similar. That's because I had this idea of talking about, because he surfs alone, this is kind of like a wide open danger place. There's a lot of sharks, and one of my role as well was to watch out for Sam when I was shooting, because there was just the two of us there, no one else. So like he talks in the video, it can be quite dangerous and you're far from help. So in addition to keeping an eye for composition and light and being, like in batteries and lenses, anything like that, anything gear related that you would normally think of, I had to also think about Sam being in the water, doing this documentary with me, and so I had to keep an eye that there's not like a shark coming here or anything like that. Like I was saying, everything was shot handheld. I did spend a lot of time on the beach, running around like a maniac, trying to get the shots, because obviously it's something that I had never done before. Shooting on the ocean is quite tricky. If you're not in the water, it's very hard to find different angles, and so I was going back and forth, shooting from one angle, from one side of the beach, going back to the other, shooting tight, shooting long, just to give myself enough so I could edit later. Overall, I'm really happy with how this turned out. It's probably my favorite work from a visual point of view. I'm really happy with some of the frames and the way it looks, and I've had really good feedback as well, which is always nice. But the main thing is Sam and Jess really loved it, and that means a lot to me, and that's something that we've been trying to do for years. Oh, we should shoot something on Sam, and his love of surfing, and I'm really glad we finally did. This was shot a few months ago, but it's a good memory. If I would do it again, I would have loved to bring someone maybe to shoot drone, to have a bit more variety on the shots, just something different. Drones, they're always a good way to break up footage. And maybe have someone in the water. I'm a terrible swimmer, so having someone that could have been there getting some shots like barrel shots or anything different, close-ups of the water, underneath the water. But this was a passion project, and it's always funny as well to shoot something with friends, like, because it's not a project, so you don't take the same approach, but it's also not something that you're doing just for fun. It's something that I was doing for portfolio. So passion projects are great, but they're also like it's funny, it's interesting too. I don't know if any of you have shot with your close friends, something that you want to make good, and something that you want to be like a proper project that looks like a proper project from an outside point of view, is a very, very interesting experience. So anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video and then you've learned something from it. Don't hesitate to ask me any questions. I can't cover the whole video, otherwise this video would be like an hour long. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.